Hi, Jesus.
How you doing?
I'm a bit like Diana.
Yes?
I feel really exhausted because I use all my willpower
Yes.
and my intellectual ability to want to change.
Yes.
And I kind of got more truths and more truths about the problem.
Yeah.
But I'm so addicted to my facade.
Yeah.
And I get angry and
Yeah.
I see it's wrong. So I go in self-punishment.
So you're in this sort of cycle.
Yes, and I see I'm in the scenario of facing death. I can see if I don't change, I'm in this.
Yeah. So you feel like, for example, when you feel anger, then you think, this is not very nice, I'm angry. So then you go into judgment, right? And then you go, this anger is no good, I've got to change. So now I'm going to force myself to change. Using my willpower to do so. In other words, you just really force it, The forcing, that makes me very, very sad, which I don't want to feel. So I, of course, get angry again. And then I judge the anger again. Right? When I say sad, it's not almost sad, it's like a sadness along with self-attack, right?
And spirit attack.
Well, of course, if you're attacking yourself, then don't you think there's going to be a mountain of spirits also want to attack you? You're doing it yourself. They think, well, that's what you want. Might as well do that. Help you along with that. Yeah. And it just keeps going around and around and around and around and around. And of course, the end result is exhaustion. Right? That's the end result. Do you remember the channeling, who was it with? I think it was with Glenn, actually. Do you remember that one that we did? There was those three spirits, Sarah, Mandy and Glenn?
Yes.
Yep. And the one we did with Glenn, he talked about how he went around in this cycle for years and years and years, and then he just got so exhausted and he just lay there exhausted a lot of the time. But what you're basically going through is what he's gone through, which is great. You're doing it on Earth instead of when he has done it in the spirit world, don't you think? Because he was doing it in the spirit world, so this is a good thing. But you need to let yourself connect with the actual grief rather than attacking yourself for having it. And you need to accept, and you need to allow yourself to feel about what's really causing you to trigger what causes the trigger of your anger, which is what you then judge. So the only way to remove a lot of these kind of problems, these circular problems, is to examine each part of the cycle that you're in. Do you follow me?
Yes.
Examine each part of the cycle you're in, because each part of the cycle is triggered by a false belief that's out of harmony with love. You follow? So what I would do is I'd go, okay, my cycle is I get angry, then I get judgmental about it, then I try and force myself to change, and then I get, and I also feel judgmental and self-attack and whatever else, and I feel sad that I'm not progressing and so forth, and then I just want to flop down and just not do anything. And by the way, even that state is a state that's out of harmony with love. Right? Now, what I would then do is examine my feelings about each state. Why is it that I want those particular states? You follow? So what does judgment give me?
It's a way to avoid my emotions.
Yes.
And my pain.
It's a way to avoid taking action as well, isn't it?
And taking action.
Yeah. So it helps me avoid a couple of things. Yeah. What does anger do for me?
It gives me power and control on my fear.
Okay.
A huge fear. It's a huge problem.
So it helps me avoid fear.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. But there are also good anger in the sense that if you can fully connect with anger sometimes, and I'm not saying that you dump it on other people, but if you connect to your anger sometimes, it will help you find out what you're angry about. Does that make sense? So a lot of it is you judging anger so much that you're not allowing anger to be felt. So that's a problem. Now, what in your childhood happened that caused you to not allow anger to be felt?
Because I got punished. Yeah.
Every time you got angry?
Yeah, it was not accepted.
Yeah. So there is a childhood belief that needs to be released that this particular emotion should not be ever felt. So there's a belief there that needs to be released. So you could work on that. And then what causes you to revert to willpower? What's the feeling inside of you that causes you to embrace willpower rather than recognising that actually the feeling is that you don't really want to do it? Why don't you let yourself feel you don't want to do it rather than feeling like you have to do it, is the question I'm asking. Can you see there's some emotions there as well about that? See, a lot of times that is about things like, it's not acceptable to do nothing, right? It's not acceptable to just sit here and feel about it. I have to take an action of some kind.
Yeah, being busy.
Yeah.
I need to be busy. Yeah.
Where did that come from?
My mother.
Yeah. Right. So basically your desire to use willpower came from your mother. Right. And that needs to be addressed. Like, you need to let yourself not do something. You need to let yourself take the action of being still. Right? Rather than having to always be busy. Right? And this self-attack, where does that come from? What's the underlying feeling there?
It's to avoid punishment.
From whom?
From my mother.
Okay, so again, that shows you where you need to go. The fact is, you need to recognise you were attacked by your mother, and every time you revert to self-attack, you're really just falling into the same pattern. Right? Now, the reason why nothing changes in these cyclic events is because we're not willing to address one or all of these particular things. So what we do is we skip from one to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, hoping there will be a resolution when actually the cycle is such that we're unwilling to address each one. So when we're in a cycle like this, what I find myself, if I'm ever in a cycle like this, is I examine each stage of my cycle, because each stage of my cycle is telling me the emotion that I don't want to feel about that particular stage of the cycle. You follow? And all I need to do is choose to feel that. So this is about feeling emotion. Right? Now, obviously, this is a lack of love of self. This is a lack of love of self. This is a lack of love of self. Right? So you can see that if we're going to get God's feelings of love about what love is, while we're engaging a whole heap of lack of love of self in the process, then God and myself are not meeting each other with regard to those particular concepts. And so I'm not accepting God's viewpoint of love there, I'm rejecting it. I'm engaging the well-trained concepts and ideas of my childhood with a refusal to address them. Do you follow? So recognise that. Recognise that that's the cycle that's in. These are love of self issues, particularly those three, all love of self issues, and this is telling me I'm refusing to love myself. And what's the main reason why we refuse to love ourselves? Do you know? It's because we want somebody else to love us first.
So I'm very needy in this place.
Yeah, you want someone else to love you first. You want someone else to demonstrate love to you first. And most people do, to be honest. This is why, we do a lot of things in order to get a love and approval from other people, right? And what God's trying to say to us is, look, every time you do that, when that person gives you love, they're not actually giving you love. They're just meeting your addiction. So it's not going to be love anyway. It's just going to harm you further. But not only that, you need to learn to love yourself how I love you is the way God's feeling about you. So you need to come to learn to love yourself the way God loves you, right? And while you resist that process, you're going to get caught up in these very negative cycles, right? So there is a direct refusal to learn to love yourself here, right? Now, rather than punishing yourself for that, you've got to find out where it came from. And it always comes from some kind of original point, a cause that usually occurred well established within your childhood that you need to address. And as you correctly state, a lot of this comes from your mother, right? Yeah. So there is a refusal to address the emotion of where this came from, emotionally, and as a result you get caught up in these cycles, and this cycle will continue potentially forever, unless you break the cycle.
Yeah, I see that, and my self-worth is just like getting lower and lower in this self-worth.
Self-worth, yep.
Yeah.
I don't know if your self-worth can really get lower. The reality is you're becoming more conscious of it through this process, obviously. The reality also is that your self-worth was well established quite low by the treatment of your mother. So that's where, again, you need to go. Remember, self-worth is not, you can't feel the feelings of lack of self-worth. You've got to feel where the lack of self-worth came from. And remember what I said to Josh earlier, lack of self-worth comes from how you get treated. And you need to come face to face with how you get treated, right? And this is where most of you refuse to go there, because that involves other people and how they treated you. And many times those other people you still want to maintain a relationship with. And so what you do is you distance yourself from their treatment of you, and unfortunately it causes you to retain the worth situation. It causes you to retain the lack of worth. The only way to work through the lack of worth is to come to face the truth about how you've been treated.
Yeah, I've been doing false processing exactly this way. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's easier to access self-deception emotion than the real hurt.
It is, yes.
And yeah, I've not been in.
When you say easier,
preferable.
Well, again, you've got to be careful, because these are just addictions. It's actually easier to process the real emotion, because then you don't have the results anymore. So obviously that's the easiest thing to do. But because of our avoidance of pain, right, and our avoidance to the sensitivity of pain, we get into these cycles. So the best thing I can say is that surrender to pain and actually grieving the pain is going to do wonders for you, right? And to do wonders for most people, actually. But most people avoid the surrender to the pain. They want to fight it, use their will to overcome it, and so forth. And it just creates these never-ending cycles that go on for years and years. And by the way, they don't just end when you're on Earth. You know, after you die, they continue. And you don't want that, right? You want, as you heard from Glenn, he went through these cycles for many years, even after he'd passed, right? So don't think that it's going to stop after you pass. It's not. It has to stop through choice. And choice, with the use of your will, has to be more in harmony with love of self. And to be harmonious with love of self, you've got to find the original causes of these particular emotions that you're projecting at yourself. And the majority of them is in order for you to become more approved of by women, right? And you just don't want to feel how you're not approved by women, right? And work through those particular emotions. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pierre.